Hey guys, thank you so much for galloping on over here. The new Zack Snyder's Justice League cut was released, and we're just going to talk about that a little bit. Just so you know, I do think this is important to bring up. A long time ago, whenever the first Justice League came out, we really wanted to like it a lot, and we kind of forced ourselves to like it a little bit.
Yeah, I really want DC to succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So whenever we first watched that original one, we gave it a pretty high score. I think I gave it like an 80.
I think I gave it a 70.
Mistaken. Mm-hmm. I gave it like a 70 or an 80, which is much higher than I would give that movie. Mm-hmm. Now I'd probably give that movie somewhere in the 30 to 40 range. I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah. So, I mean, I just want to bring that up. So because if you go back there and our grade is like higher than this one, it's not because we like the original more. It's because we've kind of forced ourselves to like it. But we're gonna go in and get into this video. We're gonna start off. We do want to talk about kind of the story. If you haven't heard about the story of what happened with what happened with this cut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So back before the original version came out in 2017, Zack Snyder suffered a family tragedy. So he had to step away from the project, and DC brought in Joss Whedon just like a few months. I don't know how long before it was supposed to come out, but it wasn't long before it was going to come out to theaters. And he completely rewrote a lot of the movie. Yeah. It's the same story pretty much, but he rewrote a lot of the scenes. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the scenes are different. A lot of the dialogue is different. He threw in a lot of jokes. He changed pretty much the whole tone of the movie.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why Superman in the original version, his face looks really weird in a lot of scenes, because when Joss Whedon came in and rewrote and reshot a lot of the scenes, Henry Cavill had already gone on to start filming Mission Impossible. And in that movie, he was required to have a mustache and a beard, so he wasn't allowed to shave it. So they had to use CGI to remove his mustache and everything, and it just looked really weird. So any scene that in the original where his face looks weird was a scene that Joss Whedon had reshot.
Yeah.
And ever since that movie came out, a lot of DC fans have been clamoring for the Snyder Cut to be released, because he shot like a 4-hour epic. And when Joss Whedon came in, he cut out a whole bunch of that. And then on top of that, DC, the heads of DC, required that the movie be 2 hours or less. Yeah, which is ridiculous for a team-up movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the Avengers movies were all over 2 hours, and they had a lot of movies to build up to that.
Yeah, and not to mention, we brought this up before. I think we have, anyways. Mm-hmm. Not to mention that that Justice League had so much to do, in the sense of, and we got a lot of hate on our last video when we talked about the trailer for the Zack Snyder cut, talking about how Marvel isn't the only way to do this. Mm-hmm. I do agree, Marvel probably isn't the only way to pull this off. I just feel like they're the only ones who've done it correctly. Whenever you did watch the original Justice League, the main issue with making it 2 hours, and honestly, I don't even know if they could have gotten done like 2.5 hours.
Right.
Is the fact that there were so many characters that weren't introduced at all. All of these characters didn't have any kind of backstory with each other. They didn't have any pre-existing relationships. And pre-existing relationships can go a long ways whenever it comes to having having good characterization. For instance, like in the Avengers, and I don't want to keep comparing this to the Avengers or anything, but in the Avengers, Hawkeye, we didn't know a lot about him at all. But he had a pre-existing relationship with Black Widow, which is someone we already knew, so it was easier to get used to him. It's easy to get to know him. Most of these characters didn't have any pre-existing relationships. We hadn't met them, so we had to kind of get used to these characters. We had to get to know these characters. We had to care about these characters. We had to care about the relationship between all the characters. You had to bring Superman back to life. You had to introduce the villain. You had to give us a reason to care about the villain, make that villain interesting. There was so much you had to do with that, and they almost set themselves up for failure. Well, they did set themselves up for failure with that first one, and all of that, including the fact that it had to be 2 hours or less.
So all that added up to the original theatrical version being really messy.
Yeah.
And for, like I said, a lot of fans were wanting the Snyder Cut to be released, and it even got to a point to where a lot of the actors were wanting the Snyder Cut to be released. I know Jason Momoa was a huge factor in the Snyder Cut movement.
We're just sitting around doing nothing. Fucking release the Snyder Cut, am I right?
Exactly. Release the Snyder Cut.
Release the fucking Snyder Cut.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Like, what are we waiting for? There's some goodies in there. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it out there. So hopefully, generally the shit I put out there comes true. Let's hope it does. Release the fucking Snyder Cut, baby!
And I know Ben Affleck and a few others were also really wanting the Snyder Cut to be released as well. So then last year, pretty close to the start of the pandemic, DC announced that they were going to release the Snyder Cut. They're going to spend millions of dollars to finish the Snyder Cut, finish the CGI, finish everything that needed to be done for Snyder's vision for what he wanted the movie to be.
Yeah, exactly. And so, first of all, I want to start this off by saying I did like this movie. I think it was a good movie. I want to talk about some people's complaints that I've seen. So probably one of the biggest complaints is the fact that it is 4 hours. And just so you know, if you don't know that already, it is 4 hours. It's a 4 hour long movie. But don't worry, you can back out of it. You can press pause.
Because they do separate it into 6 sections.
Yeah, it's separated into sections
and an epilogue. Mm-hmm. So you can watch it as a mini series if you wanted to, if you truly wanted to, and didn't want to watch all 4 hours at one time.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think there was nothing wrong with the runtime. It never felt like it dragged. It just felt like it was long. It was long. Mm-hmm. I mean, it didn't really feel like it was long. It honestly felt like maybe 3 hours.
Right. Yeah. It really didn't. I don't think I've ever watched a 4 hour movie, but it really didn't feel like 4 hours. The only reason why it felt like 4 hours was because we started during the daytime and then it was nighttime. When it ended.
Yeah.
But it really, like Marquez said, it really didn't drag, surprisingly.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole movie, I was pretty intrigued throughout. Another complaint I've seen, and just in case you don't know, it is a 4x3. Is that the term? Yeah, 4x3.
Yeah, the sides. There's black bars on the sides, but there's none on the top or bottom. Yeah,
and a lot of people might think, watching that, you might think that like it's like an old TV kind of setup to where you're missing the sides and stuff like that. Because whenever widescreen came in, the main point of that was you could see sides.
Right.
Just so you know, it's not fit to that. It's fit to IMAX.
Yeah.
So the thing about IMAX is you get the sides, but you get more on top.
Right.
So it might look weird, but you are getting more of a shot than you would with just a normal widescreen.
So going into the actual movie, one of the best parts about it actually being 4 hours was they had time to actually really go into a lot of these characters that they didn't get to in the theatrical version, especially like Cyborg, which honestly I like Cyborg a lot in the theatrical version.
Yeah, he was probably the best thing about it.
He is probably one of my favorite parts and the most interesting parts of the theatrical version.
Yeah.
But they go even deeper into his backstory in this version. It really tied into the actual story as well. And
also the characters like Flash. Flash, to me, in the original, he did get to a point where it became a little bit annoying. And I'm not going to say he didn't come with no annoyance in this movie at all.
Right.
But it was better than in the original. And I think what the problem with the original is that, Joss Whedon, a big thing that he does, and it was very present in the first Avengers, one of our biggest complaints with the first Avengers movie is that there's too much comedy.
Yeah, which I think he really, I won't say ruined the MCU because the MCU is still great, but I think he's the one who started that whole tone of the MCU movies.
Yeah, exactly.
They kind of fixed in later movies, but it was a really big stain on a lot of the movies.
Yeah, and so whenever it came to the first Justice League, it was really, there was a lot of humor. A ton of humor. The big issue with that is not only the fact that a lot of characters like Batman are not known for their humor, and I don't mind if Batman or someone like that says something funny, right? It's the aspect that they shouldn't be that constant. It's not their character.
Exactly.
You know? I mean,
and it takes away from other characters.
Yeah, especially
who that is their character.
Yeah, like for instance, the Flash.
Yeah,
the Flash, and why thankfully, like the Russo brothers took over for Marvel, and we keep bringing up Marvel, but it's just something I want to bring up.
Especially because Joss Whedon.
Yeah, Joss Whedon. Yeah,
was a big part of this.
Yeah, so thankfully in Marvel, the Russo brothers took over. So whenever Spider-Man did come in, his character was actually different than everyone else. He was actually funny, you know. He was like a kid, you know. He was a kid, you know, and so it didn't. There was a contrast there, a good contrast. In the original Justice League, there wasn't a contrast with Flash and the rest of the characters because everybody was spitting out one-liners, everybody was spitting out jokes. But in this one, his character did have a contrast with everybody else. He felt like the kid of the group. He felt like, you know, the Spider-Man of the group.
Right. Yeah, and not only that, but not to go into spoilers, but especially like towards the end of the movie, he felt like he was actually doing stuff that was like actually really important to their mission.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like he was just like the inexperienced kid, which he did feel inexperienced, but at the same time, learning as he was going, like to do big stuff.
And another thing that I really want to bring up in this video, because whenever we did that trailer video, a lot of people didn't like the fact that we talked about how the CGI in the movie didn't look that much better than the original did. And I still kind of stand by that in a sense. I don't think the trailer really did justice to how good this movie actually looks. I'm not going to say it looks perfect, but it looks pretty good. The CGI is a big step up, especially whenever it comes to what's his name?
Darkseid and Steppenwolf.
Steppenwolf. Whenever it comes to Steppenwolf, it's a complete 180. Like, around there, but it looks a lot better. Yeah,
like I'm not gonna say I really love the design of his face, but overall, the CGI on him was surprisingly really good. Like I didn't think I was gonna like the CGI on him that much, to be honest, even in this new version.
Yeah,
but he was actually really good, and even Darkseid was the CGI on him was actually really good too.
Yeah,
and also talking about Darkseid, I actually really liked how they did, because I thought they were gonna show him too much. I thought it was gonna be too much too soon for showing that they're big bad. But I really liked how they teased him. They didn't use them too much.
Yeah, exactly. And just speaking about Steppenwolf real quick, he is so much better of a villain than he was in the original. Obviously, his villain wasn't like spectacular in this, but it was pretty good. Like,
it was a lot more interesting.
Yeah, a lot more interesting. He had a very interesting aspect. He felt like
he wasn't just randomly saying mother.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't just trying to take over the world or destroy the world. He actually had a reason for everything. Like, he felt like a very slight spoiler here, just saying, just warning. He did feel like a failure to Darkseid, and so he was trying to make up for that wrong, or make up for that failure he made.
Right. I do wish they went a little bit deeper into what he actually did, but the fact that they actually had that there made him more interesting than he was in the theatrical version.
Yeah, exactly. And so whenever you watch him in this movie, it's a lot more intriguing. I actually was fine. I actually liked his presence in this movie. In the original, I couldn't care less about him at all. I didn't like him in the original at all. Whenever he came on screen, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel like there was a motive there. I just felt like he was some guy fighting Justice League. That's all he really was, In this movie, I felt a lot more. I actually was excited whenever he came on screen. I was excited to see what was going to happen with his character, and it really is just small changes like that. A lot of this movie, there is a lot of small changes that make a huge difference. To just seeing what Zack Snyder actually had planned for this. And I don't necessarily think he had everything. I don't know if he necessarily had all of this planned, because it is 4 hours. So a regular film release is a lot shorter than that.
I do know that he was planning on having it pretty long. I think they were even talking about splitting the movie up into 2 parts, but I'm not really sure exactly what he had planned. But.
Yeah, and so a lot of this movie is a lot of smaller changes that really help out, and it just really makes this movie a lot more interesting, way more interesting. And just going back to the CGI and all that stuff, and how much better this movie looks. In the original, and we brought this up before, the original is just ugly. It is an ugly,
especially
movie.
The end.
Yeah,
the whole invite scene, especially.
Yeah, the whole sky is just some disgusting color. There's so many bad colors. What else was there? Like, you can really tell that they're just standing in front of a green screen, and it's so badly done. In this movie, there's not like no scenes where I can tell they're standing in front of a green screen, but even those scenes are a lot more subtle.
Yeah,
the green screen's a lot more subtle than the original, and it just looks better. The colors are better. The fight scene, the end fight scene, is fantastic. Honestly, I actually love the end fight scene.
And at this point, we're going to go into spoilers, because what we're talking about right now, I kind of do want to go into spoilers. So if you just want to see what grade we give this movie, you can go this timestamp right here. But the end fight scene, I really loved how they did it, because in the original, they needed Superman. Like, Superman was literally doing everything once he got there. Yeah. He was fighting Steppenwolf. He was separating them other boxes. He was saving civilians. He was literally doing everything.
Yeah.
And like, the Justice League desperately needed him. In Zack Snyder's version, it really, before Superman got there, it really felt like the Justice League were just on the very edge of actually doing it, of actually completing what they were trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But they just needed that small piece of Superman being there to help push them over the edge.
Yeah. And not to mention this, one of my favorite things that Superman didn't kill Steppenwolf.
Right. Yeah.
Who was a Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah.
That like officially like killed him.
Chopped his head off.
Chopped his head off. I'm like, that's kind of cool. Like, because we're watching, I was like, we were talking about how much we loved that aspect of it. The fact that they didn't need Superman up to a certain point. I'm like, well, yeah, but they're probably just gonna need him to kill him. Mm-hmm. I'm like, they didn't even need him for that. I mean, they did need him at a certain point, but they heat him and kill him. They just needed him for the extra help.
Right.
Basically, in this fight, Superman was the extra help.
Exactly.
And that was a really cool aspect. Not only that, right? Batman did something, dude. I don't even know how they figured that out either, because like Batman being able to fight in that and actually do something good, is really that was really cool. Flash did something really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
He did something really necessary
instead of just saving. Oh, well, I mean, I'm not gonna say like saving a family isn't big, but compared to what everybody else was doing, what he did in this version was so on the same level as everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. In this movie,
if not more.
Yeah, and this movie had the fight scenes a lot more focused because that family wasn't in it. Mm-hmm. That family pretty much was purely in there because I don't think Joss Whedon could figure out how to make any of them do anything.
Right, exactly.
You know?
And even then, Superman did more than the Flash because Superman was saving a whole building, while the Flash just had that one family in the car.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that we were talking about in the movie, because the scene, I think when they steals the last, whenever Steppenwolf steals the last mother box, it's right after Superman flies off with Lois Lane. And that was done like 10 times better.
Yeah, because in the original, like literally, you saw that beam of Steppenwolf come down, and the Justice League don't even try to run; they just sit there and stare. And they're like, Wonder Woman's like, he has the last box.
The mother box. He has the last one.
Yeah.
You don't even see Steppenwolf or anything. He's just like goes down a beam and grabs it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that's a big moment.
Yeah.
Like he just took the last box.
The last box. The last box. It's a big moment. They don't do anything with it. And this, they do a ton of stuff with that one scene.
Right.
Way more.
Yeah.
Especially
with Cyborg's
way more than
character.
they even had to. Yeah, yeah, especially with Cyborg's character, because you go in there, they actually try to stop Steppenwolf. Weirdly enough, who knew? Who knew they would have tried to stop him from stealing the last box, you know? And they tried to stop him. They couldn't. And it actually had a big moment for Cyborg. Mm-hmm. You know, his dad died. Pretty much his dad sacrificed himself in order for them just to be able to
know where
it's at. Yeah, know where it was. Not to like destroy it. He did it just so they can know where it was, so they could detect where it was.
Exactly.
Which is such a cool scene. And you saw Cyborg actually really realizing that he did love his father, regardless of whatever his father did to him. There's a piece of him who really didn't know that he did it because he did what he did to Cyborg because he loved him. It might not have been in the best way, you know, but it makes him a much more interesting character. Just even his dad, you know, his dad, not a perfect person, but tried to do what he thought was right.
Right.
You know, and that was in the original, but it was a very glossed over part. There wasn't a lot there. It didn't really have a lot of weight to it. It had a little bit of weight to it. It had the most weight in the entire original, but you know, but it was just way better done in this movie. And then one of my favorite things they did take out, and we pretty much knew it was going to take out because Zack Snyder pretty much said that it was stupid. Everybody else thought it was too, but the do you bleed?
The way he says it in the movie is so weird.
Yeah, that line is so stupid in the original. Because, I mean, it makes sense in Batman vs. Superman. You know, I mean, I have my complaints about that movie, but it made sense in Batman vs. Superman because Batman's asking Superman, "Do you bleed?" It's almost like a threat to Superman, like saying, like, I'm gonna make you bleed. You know?
Right.
You know, I'm gonna do it. Maybe you've never bled before, but I'm gonna make you bleed. You know, it's like a threat to him, and it's a cool line because it's something big. Do you bleed? Do you bleed, Superman?
Yeah, because he's a god.
He's pretty much a god. But whenever Superman asks Batman, "Do you bleed?" It's like, yeah,
he's a human.
Yeah, Superman. Yeah, you can probably easily make Batman bleed. It's not that difficult. I could probably make Batman bleed. You know, it's not that.
That's a big statement. You're gonna have all the Batman fanboys attacking you for the statement.
Meet me at 10 o'clock tonight, Batman. I got you. I'll make you bleed. That's probably about it, though.
No prep time.
Yeah, no prep time. I'm not going to be able to fight you very well, but I can maybe make you bleed a little bit. Yeah, but yeah, Overall, this movie did so much better things than the original. This movie made me excited to see what else DC has to do, which I haven't really felt that way, honestly, in a while.
Exactly.
You know, ever since, I don't know, Batman vs Superman I liked when I first saw it, and I still do have a certain fondness for it now, but I haven't wanted to see what this DC universe has to do.
Right.
You know, none of the stories felt like they really went well together. The Justice League, after the Justice League, it just felt like they need to start over, you know? But after this movie, I'm like, you know what? You know, if they can continue it from here, I'm excited to see what they have to do with it. And even though we do think this movie's good, I don't want to act like we think it's spectacular or great. You know, it's good. It's good. And I really do think that's fine. It's
a huge step up from the original.
Yeah, that's fine. To say a movie's good, there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think we should go over some of the things that we didn't necessarily like about it. For one of the more minuscule things I didn't like about it, but it really annoyed me, was every time Wonder Woman would get on screen, they would play that Scandinavian.
Perfect imitation.
Yeah. So that music, I didn't mind it like in the beginning when they would play it. But it was like every time. It was like they were trying to remind us that Wonder Woman was on screen.
Exactly.
You know? And so I didn't like,
especially because like Wonder Woman already has amazing music. She has one of my favorite sound or like music for a superhero. I don't think they should have played it every time she's on screen.
Yeah.
But they should have used it instead of the music they kept playing.
For some reason, she was the only one that did it with, really. I think the other people, they play like just some, you know, regular like action music, you know, whenever things were happening. But whenever Wonder Woman would do it, they would just play that music, that weird little Scandinavian yell. And I don't know if I'm even saying that correctly. I don't know what it's called. I just know it's kind of some kind of Scandinavian music. And so I'm not going to say that's a huge negative, but it was something that kind of annoyed me every time it played. Right. And another thing, just kind of including that, is I do think there was way too much slow motion in this movie.
Oh yeah,
like there was a ton of it. I don't think it was necessary.
Yeah. With it being 4 hours, I feel like they could have really trimmed off quite a bit of that runtime with them not using so much slow motion.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand some
I don't think they should have cut all of it out. But there were a lot of times where I feel like they could have cut it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I do think, like, for instance, Flash, I do think, the slow-mo's needed there, you know, whenever it comes to Flash. But it was just so much slow motion. A lot of times it wasn't needed at all. There was, every once in a while it was needed, like you said, you know, but I do think they should have cut out a lot of it because I don't think a lot of people realize just how cool it is to see something not slow motion.
Right.
Like action scenes that aren't slow motion. They can be done really well. For instance, John Wick. I mean, I know it's not in the same realm of action movies.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of wide shots that aren't slow motion. It's a lot. It can be a lot more fun even to see.
Exactly.
You know, and like I said, whenever it comes to Flash, obviously you kind of need to have slow mo. But I do think a lot of times they just overuse it.
I do think they overuse the slow motion with the Flash and the scene with him and Iris. First scene with them and when she gets into the car wreck.
Yeah.
And then the song that they played was really way over dramatic.
Yeah. I will say a lot of the music in this movie was kind of weird choices, but you know, it wasn't horrible music. It was just strange choices. You know?
One of the big negatives I have for this movie was there were a lot of scenes where there's a lot of exposition, which exposition isn't bad all the time. But in this movie, they really felt like they were forced to explain stuff to us.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't always have a problem with exposition. Sometimes exposition can be told to you well to where it just seems like people are talking to each other. And sometimes I don't even think that's always necessary, but sometimes whenever you have to do it, that's fine. But I do feel like every scene of exposition in this movie really just seemed like they were talking to me.
Right.
You know, they're just trying to heavily explain, especially since probably you brought this up while we're watching it, but the scene where it was showing how like there was like Atlantis, what are the Atlanteans, yeah, Atlanteans and
the Green Lanterns,
and Amazons, yeah, how they were pretty much together at one point with humans. Even they were pretty much together at one point to fight off dark side, you know,
and they kind of explained what he was going after the mother boxes and all that.
Yeah, and so that scene was cool. But it was just being talked over.
Yeah, I really feel like that movie or that scene could have been at the beginning of the movie with no narration just them showing the scene and the characters talking amongst themselves
Yeah.
could have explained kind of what was going on.
And so honestly, like, I will say that probably trimmed off the most points for this movie is just how much exposition there really was.
Right.
And like I said, I don't always have an issue with exposition. Sometimes it could be done well. And sometimes, and usually the cases that it's done well in is whenever there's not a lot of it. And it's usually told in a pretty cool way to where it doesn't feel like they're talking to me. You know, every time in this movie, it felt like they're talking to me.
Right, yeah. And talking about the exposition and just the runtime, the 4-hour runtime, even with the 4-hour runtime that it had, like the fact that they still need exposition. I mean, I know we might get a little hate on this about this, but it goes to show again that they should have had more movies before this
Yeah.
to explain these characters.
Yeah.
So they didn't need so much exposition in this movie.
Yeah, and I know, and like I said, we might get some hate on this little last section because we're gonna kind of talk a little bad about it, and I don't necessarily want to take off points for this part of it, but we've talked about how there was a lot of the character development was done really well. A lot of people have talked about and I know that a lot of fans of DC are going to bring up the fact they're going to be like, well, look at that. Like the Marvel fanboys are going to be all mad now because DC put up this great movie, you know, and stuff like that. Pretty much saying like, you can make a good movie without the Marvel formula, without making a whole bunch of superhero movies one after the other. You can make a good team up movie without doing that. I would say, okay, if you are making the argument that it should be a series, like a TV series, or, you know, not if, you know, it should be a movie, like a movie that goes out in theaters. Because at the end of the day, this movie had a lot of good characterization. It was done a lot better than the original. But then today it was 4 hours. And they pretty much had almost a movie of characterization and a movie Justice League. Right. Basically, that's what they had. Yeah. Which is pretty much what we've been asking for. You know? And I know that like it's not going to be to that extent because there's like several movies of characters, you know? Yeah. But the thing is, if you got each of these people's movies and took out the villain aspect of all their movies and just got that little portion and placed it in this movie, that's pretty much what we got, if that makes sense. Yeah, no, you know, it does. It's cool on a streaming service, and that maybe this will open up doors for longer movies that have this capability. But at the end of the day, that's really just a series, like a mini series, you know? And this movie can't be a two-parter, and I think Jeremy Johnson did this well. It can't be a two-parter because the ending wouldn't really... It would just kind of end. Yeah, the ending for the first movie, if you split it up into two halves, it really wouldn't be an ending because it didn't. The middle section didn't really have a place where you could end a movie. Yeah, because basically the it was one movie of characterization, you know, making the characters interesting. Set up, and then another movie of Justice League. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, like it was 4 hours, and I don't want to dock it down for being 4 hours or anything like that. And so like we said on our trailer video, we got a lot of hate talking about how we were kind of talking about how it needs to just go by the Marvel formula. I don't think the Marvel way is the only way to do it. I just think it's the only way that's worked so far to make a universe. It's the only way that's worked so far, really. If you want to make your regular 2.5 hour movies that go out in theaters, it's the only way that's worked so far. If you want to do your movies on streaming services that are 4 hours or do TV series, yeah, there's definitely another way to do it, but that's irrelevant to the argument that I was actually making. Well, anyways, guys, I know we ended that kind of on a negative note. It was just something I felt like I needed to say about it. Like I said, I'm not going to dock any points off the fact that I think it could have been good if it wasn't 4 hours. But I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not going to dock it because at the end of the day, that was the movie we got. It was 4 hours. I can't dock it for what it was, you know. And we haven't really talked about this, but the Jared Leto Joker. We do have kind of differing opinions on this. I liked him a lot more in this. I think his laugh could have been a little better, but I liked mostly everything else. Yeah, I really had high hopes for him from the trailer, but he didn't really win me over. I do like his look. I liked his mannerisms. I just didn't like his voice or his laugh almost at all. Well, I won't say almost at all. I did like it more than in Suicide Squad. Yeah. But it still wasn't anything that I'm excited to see again. Yeah, I got you. The laugh was the only thing I think needed work. The voice I didn't mind too much. I do think there's better voices, but I didn't mind it. It sounded something to where It sounded like something I could live with.
Yeah, and also since we're bringing that up, just one more thing that I do want to bring up: the ending, the epilogue. I mean, it was an epilogue, so I mean, it didn't need to. The purpose of it was to tease other stuff, but I feel like it just like the movie kind of felt like it kept ending over and over again. I feel like it could have done without a lot of the epilogue, to be honest.
And another thing that was kind of weirdly done was this is a really big spoiler, just in case you're like, well, these I can take a few spoilers,
Right,
you know.
yeah.
This is a really big spoiler if you haven't, really big, and that's the fact that Martian Manhunter's in this movie. So Martian Manhunter, I think, and another kind of smaller negative is the fact that I don't think they should have had him in the movie until the very end.
Yeah.
That very end scene when he's talking to Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, it was really awkward whenever like he was shapeshifted as Martha Kent.
Yeah.
And he was talking to Lois Lane, and then after the scene, it was revealed that it was actually him. I feel like that was kind of forced and kind of weird, kind of a weird decision, because I feel like it would have had more emotion if it was just Martha Kent talking to Lois Lane about Clark Kent, who is dead.
I also don't feel like they really gave Lois Lane much of a purpose. They've had a really hard time with giving Lois Lane some kind of purpose in these movies. I wish they would have done something more with her. And I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think it's necessarily this movie's fault. It's just the fact that she wasn't done anything really in Batman vs Superman. They kind of just had her there. They had her in the fight, and they're like, okay, we need to figure out something to do with her. And they've had a trouble with this. I don't think it would have been that bad in this movie if they didn't have her do a lot. It's just that like they haven't really found a purpose for her in this universe yet. Well, guys, overall, I know we just kind of talked a lot of negatives about it, and it probably seems like we don't like it. I mean, obviously we do. We do like this movie. I do think it's a good movie. It's like light years better than the original, and even disregarding the original, it's just a good movie in general. I would have been happy to have seen this in the theaters, you know?
And honestly, if they do decide to release it to IMAX, I kind of do want to see it in IMAX.
Exactly. I would love to see an IMAX, and honestly, I really do hope they continue from this Justice League. I would like to see where this goes on, where the characters go on. Honestly, I want to see Ben Affleck back as Batman, but we've honestly been on Ben Affleck's side since Batman vs Superman. So I really do want to see him continue. I would love to see that Ben Affleck directed Batman movie that we were promised, but then they canceled it. We are going to say that Zack Snyder's Justice League is 78% awesome. Well, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, comment and let us know what you thought about this video, what you thought about Zack Snyder's Justice League, how you thought it compared to the original, which one did you like more, and why did you like one more than the other. Also, try not to bash us for this video. We do like this movie. We're not like Marvel fanboys. We just like movies in general. I think that's a really big thing to bring about is the fact that we do like comic books, but in the forefront, we are film lovers. And more than anything, we're film lovers. So we're going to like a movie depending on if it's a good movie or not.
Right.
And so I do think that's a very important thing to bring up.
Yeah, and don't forget, we have social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Two Awesome Men.
And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see us later.